Good morning, Mr. McKenzie. This is my culminating for CIA4U1, also known as Analyzing Economic Issues within Canada. And my topic I have chosen is immigration, and I decided to go with the argument how immigration has negatively impacted Canada's economy. So these are the key arguments that we will be following. What is immigration? How immigration affects housing? And the last point, what is Canada's decision to immigration? What will they do? So, to start, what is immigration? So immigration can be defined as the action of movement into a new country with the intent to reside in that foreign country. Now, this can happen from a variety of push and pull factors. And so push and pull factors are things that make people want to go in or out of the country. So push factors would be economic hardship, poor living conditions, lack of stability, lack of political instability, and natural disasters. Pull factors would be more opportunity, better living conditions, less disasters, and also higher income and opportunities for people. So when we talk about immigration and emigration, we can define it one as coming into a country and one as coming out, but how do we know which one's which? Well, to start, if we look at the beginning letter, I and E, we can see that it is clear, we as we were talking about immigration, it is coming in to the country if we take I, and for E, we can use it as coming out, exiting the country for E. Now, next slide. So, how does immigration affect housing? Immigration in Canada has caused housing to be more demanded. And housing is also built not just for immigrants though, but for Canadian residents. So, say for example, if we had 10,000 people come into Canada, right? These are all immigrants, so a whole immigrant community. But we only built 5,000. What happens to those other people, right? Those people either have no homes or they need to either live with someone else or live with a bunch of other people, which can be stressful. So when we talk about housing in Canada now, we talk about the scarcity mindset, which is true because scarcity of housing becomes more present as the quantity demanded for homes does not meet the demand supplied. This is really evident with how we see there's not enough housing. Housing is too expensive. And when we talk about that housing is too expensive, we talk about inflation in Canada, worsening housing issue, especially with the mass immigration. So not only has housing gone up in price, but immigration has pressured the prices to go up and pressured construction and rental workers to increase and skyrocket those prices. And nevertheless, immigrants increasing rental prices and housing prices to create more space between vacancies and inflation. When we talk about vacancies, when I talk about vacancies, I am talking about the condo market. The condo market, there's an abundance of condos for sale that could be for sale right now. However, the reason why no one buys them is because of their skyrocketed price of a median $2,000 each condo. And so the issue with that is the affordability, and that no one is able to afford that because A, having $2,000 as rent is unaffordable at that point, and having a down payment for a mortgage would be better, and B, it's not worth the living space. And so with these graphs over here, these reports, condo price report, skyrocketing as we could see from 2022 all the way up here, and somewhat slowing down, but it's still on this huge rise, which could be 770K so far with the average sale. Here's a better look of it. And so a report shows the sales of these condos. Now when we talk about sales, we talk about how many were sold. And so as you can see here, a huge skyrocket can be seen between 2018 to 2020. So right here and here. And then as we can see, no, this is 2020. Yep. And as we can see, it goes skyrocket down because it's become too expensive. No one wants to buy it. And so When we talk about immigration, we can also compare to the Malthusian prediction, which is when there's too many people. It's the prediction that when there's too many people, there can be poverty and famine, and the GDP can go negative. And now I say this because it can be compared to the many people in Canada, which can lead to less natural resources and create a huge scarcity of land, causing poverty, famine, and GDP to be possibly halted and even negative, meaning no economic growth. Our economy does not move, which is bad, really bad, in fact. However, this is not as similar. In fact, Canada believes that our GDP may only go up in the future. However, it is not really gleam right now. But even the Bank of Canada for Monetary Policy has reported stating that strong population growth has boosted demand for housing, this adding pressure on housing prices and rents. So on to our next slide. So when we talk about immigration workers, we need to separate them into three categories for how they contribute to the labor force. We have skilled workers who work as people like nursing, engineering, manufacturers, carpenters, mechanics, plumbers, and even teachers. Unskilled workers does not require any specialization of certain skill sets or formal education. These people can be considered cashiers, taxi drivers, bartenders, fast food workers, and even community center helpers. And now last one, semi-skilled workers, refers to work that is often general routine of nature and requires minimal level of education. These people can be considered janitors, delivery drivers, custodians, construction workers, and laborers. So, instead of now off to contributing, how do they affect the labor force? So, immigrants come to Canada, and so native workers will feel as if their jobs will be taken. And this is from a census of Canada, how most people have felt. 1 in 2 Canadians have felt this way at some point. And now, so more competition between jobs for skilled workers to native workers. Even low skilled workers have to fight for their jobs because there are many people who can work a sort of any amount of job for a lower wage. And nevertheless, say for example, a depression of wages in a short term. So what do I mean by this? So if we have multiple people working the same job, we have this guy right here. He earns $17 to to make tables, right? But now we have an abundance of immigrants and even Canadian residents coming in wanting to work. That can create a depression in wages. Now he makes $15 an hour, which is really bad because it lowers a person's esteem into work and possibly may create unemployment. Lowering confidence in employment is not good and can cause hardship. And nevertheless, children will be impacted by young immigrants looking for work. So, when we talk about this, it's Canada's goal to fill the working population, but it also puts young teens at pressure because they cannot find jobs, usually because they're taken by young immigrants who are able to work either temporary full-time or permanently full-time while they're in the country. Now, moving on to short-term effects of immigration. So we talk about the short-term effects of immigration. Immigration may lead to huge cultural change and may cause inequality and people losing their sense of belonging due to immigration, which can hinder economic growth through political disagreements and the government having to focus on the immigration problems rather than infrastructure, trade, and so much more further. So, moving on from that, how does immigration impact social services? Now, to start, immigration floods the population of that may not be ready to properly take immigrants. So, a country that is not able, or a province that is not properly able to take in immigrants, say for example PEI. So in 2022, after COVID, Canada brought in a bunch of immigrants for a stimulus to avoid a recession. And so PEI had the population of, I think, around 100,000, I'm not really sure. But because of all the immigration, it skyrocketed to maybe 80%. And so, because of that, PI was not ready for the amount of people coming into the country. And so their electrical grids were burnt out and were running off of pure coffee. That is not true. I'm just saying that as a metaphor. But you understand. It was exhausting. It was putting strain on the government, and they were forced to upgrade something that they didn't think to upgrade before because of such a quick event, because of the government's choices. And so it's not just electrical lines, it's also our healthcare system. Health services are burnt out, and it doesn't help that there's a shortage of nurses and doctors. So when we talk about shortage in healthcare, people are not getting family doctors, people are not getting the right care, and when there's no family doctors, they end up going to the ER. But because this is happening more and often, more people are going to the ER and having to wait longer times, longer and longer schedules of time. For me, I had to go to the hospital, the ER, because of a severe allergic reaction all over. Even for my girlfriend. But we have to wait so long to be admitted. And I was surprised. It was 12 a.m. and I waited 4 hours to be admitted, only to be given Benadryl. But by the time the allergy was gone, I was fine. It would have been much better if I had a family doctor that was there, but because of the current shortage due to economic and social factors, I had no doctor. And so imagine the amount of other people going through this right now. Not just because of the population growth in Canada that has caused many of these people to go through shortages and also create longer lines, but so on and so forth. Nevertheless, social welfare being strained for a short period of time due to more immigrants needing it for migrating into Canada. But nevertheless, housing is also a social service. Housing is costly, with the median in 2022 being 816,000. That is a lot. That is more than I can count. Than what it was in 2020, which was 506. But I think it's leveled down now to about 70,000 to 6,000, but it's still not good right now due to the demand for housing, the need for it, and so on and so forth. So you can take a look at this report. It shows the housing prices and sales report. So if we were looking right now, as you can see, from 2020, probably the start of the quarter one, the the orange represents the amount that a house cost, and this represents the transactions. So blue represents transactions, and orange represents housing price. So you can see with the low transactions, but still a high price, and so on and so forth. And so right now, as we can see, it's leveled out to maybe under 700,000, but it's still bad. And so when we talk about housing, we also have to talk about the population growth. So from here, we could clearly see that we could clearly see that housing is at a normal place. And to urban planners, this is at a normal rate. This is fine. This is how it should be. Housing completions and then population growth at a steady. But when you factor in a population stimulus and people needing to come into the country, plus a pandemic, and when your housing completions are the same, but your population skyrockets, it's not good. It creates so much pressure for the housing market and raises prices extremely fast in a short amount of time. So, how do we talk about Canada's impact on social service once more? So, we can make it clear that immigration has strained social services within Canada, causing question and retreats for some companies and corporations. This has become so widespread all over Canada, not just Ontario, that Trudeau decided to make an announcement to cut back on immigration. As he stated, giving all levels of government time to catch up. As I said before, retreating for companies and corporations, all levels of government. And so now, what is immigration in Canada now? So, immigration has strained social services within Canada because of quantity demanded was more than quantity supplied. Nevertheless, immigration caused population to rise, create more competition, and wearing out wages in the short term. As explained, immigration has led to housing to double in price, pressuring construction and more housing. So, why did many immigrants come into Canada at once? Well, this was at an opportunity cost. Now I'll explain more. So, at the opportunity cost, Canada wanted to boost their population because of a declining birth rate, and nevertheless to give a stimulus to avoid a recession, in which Canada thought it would bring innovation, advancing technology, and also not be a bad idea. Which maybe in the long run you would have more innovation, but so far we've been going more further into a recession based on to CBC and CMHC statistics. So, reading off the slides, during COVID and after, Canada needed a stimulus to go into avoid recession. Because of this, mass amounts of immigration happened. Canada aimed for 1.4 million immigrants to enter the country by 2025. So, when we talk about this in this slide, so from 2021 to 2024, the natural growth rate of Canada was 10%. This means that all native Canadian citizens grew the population about 10%. But Canada grew their immigrant population by 3 million, which is about 90% of Canada's population growth than what it was before. This is a huge jump. And all because of birth rate declining and a stimulus needed and other social factors. That is insane and can cause maybe a lot of economic hardship for the short term, especially. But now we talk about what is Canada's decision to immigration. What are they going to do about it? So, Trudeau wants to cut back at immigration by at least 20%. This is because they want to make sure that Canada can restructure themselves, have better systems such as their electrical grids and PEI, more housing, especially in Vancouver, and so on and so forth. And so, as said, this is due to burnt out social services, high demand for housing, and nevertheless, Trudeau also mentions that the goal is to slow or to reduce population growth by zero because Canada is overpopulated right now. There are too many people in the country needed for housing, needed for jobs, and it would be better off letting the population just slow down and possibly catching up later when it is ready. So, section check. So this is the end of the slides, but let's go over some few things. Starting with immigration. So, as said before, immigration refers to the movement by a new to move into a new country with the intent to reside, caused by push and pull factors. As mentioned, push and pull factors can be economic hardship, increasing opportunity, decreasing opportunity, and natural disasters. And emigration refers to leaving a country you intended to reside in. So, immigrants take up more resources and create more demand for housing, pressuring prices to skyrocket, which is true. And inflation has caused housing prices to go up, nevertheless, as well as leaving condos vacant. And rising prices of rentals going up along with immigration does not help with those prices of inflation. So we talk about low-skilled and semi-skilled immigrants that fear into native citizens that their job may be taken due to immigrants of low wages creating their own job market and being able to work, more of them work into that low job market. And also, low-skilled and semi-skilled immigrants also create their own job market. Yep, as mentioned, influx population that may be working low-wage jobs. Depression in wages may occur for a short period of time due to many people working the same job as well. And so, as mentioned, the opportunity cost is presented through how Canada needed the stimulus to avoid a recession, which ended up causing more of a halted recession, but didn't create any economic growth for now. But maybe for the long run, it may. But through this, Canada strained many social services, including housing, especially from immigration. And even though the population increases, productivity may not. We notice from learning in class. Although that productivity can be increased through population, it does not all the time, and may in fact decrease productivity. And so, as you can see, the production possibilities curves as well as economic growth has not changed due to a lack of innovation and advancements in technology, mainly because of accommodation for immigrants as well as supporting burnt-out social services. And immigrants integrating into Canada can be challenging and may lead to inequality and cultural differences that may affect your daily life. And so, last slide, because of current events, Trudeau wants to cut back on immigration by 20%, which is about 500,000 of the population of immigrants that we had entering from Canada in 2021 to 2024. Hence, all these arguments that I have mentioned state how immigration has negatively impacted Canada's economy so far. And so these are my references to everything. Thank you so much, Mr. McKenzie. Have an amazing day.